My name's Lisa Flaherty, and I'm interviewing Jessie Draper for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is July 6, 2018, and the interview is taking place in Athens, Georgia. So welcome again. So what year were you born?
1977.
And where were you born?
I was born in Mutant, Germany.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh. How many people are in your family?
Not many. Maybe 10 of us. But
Brothers,
immediate
sisters?
family. I have a half-sister.
Half-sister,
Mm-hmm.
great. Does your family have any political leanings?
Yes. We are all Yellow Dog Democrats. Pretty die-hard liberal family.
And so politics was then discussed in your family quite a bit?
Yes, ever since I can remember.
And what did they talk about voting? Was that something, or was that just, how was that approached?
It was never a sit-down conversation like, you need to vote. It was just kind of understood. My grandfather ran for governor of Georgia when I was tiny. I don't know how old I was, maybe 4 or 5. Dr. McKee Hargret. And we went door to door to the homes in the area, kind of knocking on the doors, pounding the pavement, campaigning with him. And it was always just understood in my family that politics were important and who represents you is important, and you're going to vote when it's your turn, but for now you'll just support the family. So it was never it was just always understood.
What were some of the topics that your family talked most about during that period?
I don't remember when the governor, I was too little, I didn't understand, but military kind of thing. So I've had family in the military, so national security. I started hearing a lot when the whole Oliver North things were happening forever ago, so that was kind of my first murmurings. And then from then it's just been women's issues predominantly because of my family. That and then environmental issues were kind of the main topics in the family.
All right, so why don't you tell me about your profession, the favorite parts of your job, what brought you in that direction?
Okay, I'm an assistant principal of a high school, so I've been in education for 18 years. I don't know what, I fell into it. I don't have one of those stories that I always wanted to be a teacher or anything like that. I fell into it because that's what my best friend was doing, and I ended up loving it. And so it's just kind of been my path ever since then. What do I love about it? I love my kids. I love the relationships that I make with my kids. I work in very high-need areas, so it's very difficult and very time-consuming and very rewarding, all kind of in one. I have no plans to change my career path at all.
Are there any, as you've gone through your career, what have become some of your least favorite aspects of it?
Discipline.
Or challenging?
Discipline. I'm an assistant principal of discipline right now, and that is unbelievably challenging and horrible. I don't like suspending a kid. I don't like seeing them in fights. I don't like breaking up fights. It's just jarring and hard.
Okay, so when you think about your profession and the march and the ideas that brought you to the march, how do they come together?
I've gotten more vocal with my kids. So I've gotten to a place where I talk to I work in all black schools. I have for as long as I can remember. And I've gotten to a place where I understand that I live a certain life of privilege, and so I have a lot of conversations with them about how I can't change things for them. That I'm stuck in my world of privilege and that they have to change things for themselves, and they have to do, I kind of outline the timeline, and this is what you need to do, and this is the reality of you as a black male, and not my reality as a white female. And we do have, when my relationship with the kid is right, we have really in-depth conversations that I never would have had before that march with those kids. I never would have known to have them, or how to have them, or why it was even remotely important to have them.
What are their concerns?
They don't have any. I work in a very rural In Clark County, they had them. This is a very well-informed area of Georgia. It's semi-urban, and the types of parents that are here are typically pretty well-informed, and even of the ones that aren't, there are so many kids around them that are well-informed that they talk and they listen. I'm out in the country, and there's not a lot of movement, there's not a lot of communication, there's not a lot of understanding of the bigger picture. So all they know is their moms are super strict, and they don't want them out after dark. They don't understand why. They don't get it yet, and they act like they don't care, but they'll care eventually. They're going to have to.
Well, so in light of your career and the kids you interact with, how has Parkland and the March for Our Lives struck you and the children?
I was disappointed. My building didn't react. Again, Clark County, when because this is my first year at this new district, it would have been I would have been at Cedar Shoals High School. Half the building would have gotten up and demonstrated and made signs and the whole thing. This building, maybe 10 kids, we supported and they had signs, and we made it so they could go out in the parking lot, but it was very, very small, and it's sad to me. It's eye-opening, the difference between a rural and a semi-urban community. Similar demographics, poverty-wise and racially, sort of, but that rural community, they're just so uninformed. When Parkland happened, it was just another day. Some of them didn't even know about it until the teachers told them about it, or they watched CNN News. They had no idea. And they don't seem to care. And so the fire drill procedure in Georgia is now different as a result of Parkland, and I know that because that's part of my job. And they think it's stupid that we have to wait until an announcement is made when the fire alarm goes off. Because now in Georgia, you have to say, this is a fire drill, you're allowed to exit. Whereas before, just exit. And they just think it's dumb and a waste of time, and they don't get that it could actually happen in our building at any point in time. Yeah. And it can.
So, was this the first march you ever participated in?
Sure was.
So tell me about the setup, your mindset when you went, there's a march going on, and I think I'm going to do this.
Well, the day after Trump won, I took a personal day, a bereavement day, basically. My boyfriend did too, and I just started getting, and there were murmurings beginning that day of what's going to happen, what's going to be done, and I was on the phone texting with my good friend, who I hope will do her oral history as well. And I was like, we got to do something. What are we going to do? And as the weeks progressed and the march kind of started taking place and there was a date, the second that there was like a firm date, we were texting, and there's no other person I would have gone with. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just so upset over everything that was happening. I knew I needed to do something, and that was the only thing I knew to do. And so we went. So we just scheduled it, and we just didn't know what to expect at all. And
well, back up a little bit. What school were you teaching? Was this when you were at the?
I was at Cedar. Yeah, so I was at Cedar at that time, and I was a intervention coordinator. So my schedule was super flexible. My principal was everyone. I'm in Clark County, and most folks are very amenable to our wanting to be involved politically. So I had my principal's support and my building leader's support 100% on what I wanted to do. So I went in her office and I said, I'm going. And she said, great, go. And that was the end of that.
And which march did you go to?
I went to the march in Washington, D.C.
So, logistics. Tell us about how that all came together and who you ran into, how you found out about it.
You know what? I don't even remember how I found out the actual date. Certainly on Facebook or on television or something. But I remember texting with my friend Tamara, and we decided, okay, we're going. And the second we decided, we both got our laptops out and we were texting. And as we were trying to make hotel reservations, they were disappearing. So we'd click on select. And I'm sorry, this room isn't available. And we did it for hours and hours and hours, probably 4 or 5 hours. And so then we finally said, okay, DC is not going to work. Northern Virginia is probably not going to work. So we ended up deciding on Baltimore just because of the cost and availability. Baltimore was still available at that time. So after hours and hours, we found a place in Baltimore that didn't sell out before our very eyes. And the same with our planes. We had to be really creative in flying up there because the normal time of day flights were disappearing, but we found 2 on Southwest kind of in the nick of time. And then the trains, we had no options. It was either 5 a.m. or 10:30 at night. And at 10:30 at night, the march would have been over. So from Baltimore to DC, we got on the 5:30 a.m. train. It was the only one still available. So it didn't feel last minute in our preparation, but everybody else in the nation had the same idea. So it was very exciting and very frustrating at the same time.
So when were you making these plans? Before Christmas?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely like November, December-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure when at all. I guess I could scroll back in the text messages and find it, but I'm not positive.
All right. So, so let me see. So you've made your plane trips. You're getting on the plane. What was the environment in the plane?
Our plane was totally normal. Maybe because we were going from Atlanta to Baltimore. There wasn't any, and we flew Southwest even. And that had been notorious for the lights and all. It was completely just like any other flight. There were a couple of people on our flight with hats and things, but it wasn't a super exciting kind of atmosphere, just a normal plane trip. Once we got to the airport, it was a totally different situation. It was very exciting. Little pink hats everywhere. People just kind of smiling and a very positive, energetic vibe, but kind of a nondescript right up there.
So, so you get up 5:30 on a train. So tell about that trip.
That was really exciting. So we kind of toured Baltimore the day before, went to bed pretty early, got up, 4 in the morning. And when we got to the train station, it was already packed. And there's a line system that's pretty confusing, and no one knew what was going on because none of us are from there. I don't know. It was just really positive. There were people with their little signs and tubes everywhere, people fighting for coffee in a good way. Just really, really exciting and energetic, especially for being 5:30 in the morning. I don't think that's normal. And I am not a morning person. Plus, I'm pretty introverted. So I don't like big crowds of people, and I just find that exhausting. But it was really fun. It was really like, oh, we're all here for the same thing, and everybody was very helpful to one another. So it wasn't, if there was someone struggling with picking up all their stuff in their bag, it was just kind of a very community, we're going to help you get on this train, lady, older lady, and that kind of thing. Okay. So it was fun.
So, so I guess is the magnitude of people, when would you say that struck you? Was it when you were making your reservations, when you were getting on the train? When did it kind of hit you?
When we got there really early, so we were by the main stage by 8:30. Mm-hmm. And we decided that we were going to stay put. So I did not realize that blocks and blocks and blocks of the streets were filled until like that night when we were on the news. So we kept seeing planes and helicopters fly over, but you're kind of focused on the stage, and we had been standing in one spot for 8 hours. You just have no concept. It's crowded where you are, but I had no idea what was happening until 8 hours later, probably around 4 or 5 at night, when we actually started to be able to walk a little bit. How many people were there and what was going on. That's when it hit me, is that night.
So who did you get to hear? Who was on the stage that you remember listening to?
I don't remember. There were so many people, but probably Viola Davis, Ashley Judd, that cute little, I brought her name up on my phone because that made me cry. And I'm terrible with names. What was that? The sweet little girl's name. You might remember. The very small Sophia Cruz. That was it for me. Like, I was done after Cruz. The senator from California, Senator Harris, I didn't even know who she was before then. Mm-hmm. And to hear her, that was really fun. The only turn off with speakers was, for me, like Madonna. I just, whatever. I'm over it. I'm old now, and I've kind of been through my Madonna phase. But everybody else, Ashley Judd spoke for a long time, and she was really, she's a great speaker.
Do you remember the gist of what she was saying? What connected from what she was saying? What did you connect with?
Her positivity. Mm-hmm. And so all the speakers were like, well, not all, but most of the speakers were like that. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, this is so awful, because it is, in my opinion, so unbelievably awful. Her just being like, our time is now. We need to come together now. This event is just the beginning of what we can all do. And I guess I didn't realize, I had been so negative for the months since November, and that day I had just been in a fog of, this is awful. It kind of redirected me. All of the speakers kind of redirected my attitude a little bit. And so I was able to go home, not in a little gloom of, oh my gosh, everything is terrible. It was like, okay, what am I going to do next? What can I do when I go home? And I think it was really her in particular, because she spoke so clearly and she had so many pauses for us to really process what she was saying. That was incredible.
So, the day after the march, so you come home and you're making your way back here to Athens. What was going through your mind at that time?
I was exhausted. So sheer exhaustion. And I was just like in the airplane, in the airport, you can see CNN or whatever news channel they had on. And at that point, it was finally sinking in about the numbers of human beings that had been there. I was still kind of taking that in. And I was seeing some press about how no one had been arrested and there hadn't been any violence. And I was kind of taking that in, like, see, we can do this. Just kind of trying to get the outsider's perspective, because with my getting kind of near the stage at 8:30 in the morning, I didn't have any perspective. All I had was my little narrow group of folks I was with for that 12 hours that day. And so it was kind of taking in everybody else's perspective, answering a lot of text messages like, are you okay? How was it? And I couldn't talk about it coherently for at least a week or two. I'm a slow processor in general, and it really took some time for me to process how powerful it had all been and what I had done and what did it mean to me? Like, what was I supposed to do next, and kind of all that.
Yeah. What did your family? You said at work was very supportive. Your family, what did they say?
Family. We're all pretty political anyway. I had the support of my entire family. They were really excited for me. I would not have been able to go if it weren't for some of the financial support that my family gave with the hotel room, because it was so expensive. So they kind of contributed and made it possible for me and my friend to have a place to stay that was safe and all of that. And so they were just supportive, and they had a lot of questions, and I imagine that they were probably a little frustrated that I didn't answer them right away. It was, it was great. And I just didn't have a lot to say for a while. And then eventually I kind of started showing them pictures and signs and things like that. But 1,000% supportive family. Okay. And excited. This is the norm in my family. Going to a march is the norm. So I think they were like, finally, she's going to something. Good for her. I think it was probably a little bit of that also. They were proud. I got a lot of text messages that they were proud of me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you talk to anybody around you since you got there so early? What any interactions that you found kind of intriguing or
I was intrigued about how many men were there. Definitely talked to several men about why they were there and who they were marching for and things like that. And they were all marching for their children or their grandchildren in some cases, or their mothers, just kind of depending. And that was really interesting to kind of hear. I just wasn't expecting to see the number of men that I saw. There were a lot. People around me, we were kind of in there like little sardines. So it was a lot of conversation of, hey, I'm going to turn around really quick and get this out of my bag. So it wasn't a lot of march oriented. It's like, hey, I don't want to bump into you, but I'm really thirsty. A lot of that kind of, how are we all going to do this together in a very tight one by one kind of box?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tight really meant tight.
Mm-hmm, yes. And so if one person had to bend over to get something or to scoop up a child or something, we all kind of had to shift our bodies and all of that to make that happen. So there was no movement for at least 8 hours. And my friend who I was with has rheumatoid arthritis, so it was hard on her. She had to move her joints, and people around her were accommodating and wonderful, and she explained how sorry she was, but everybody was great. So a lot of the conversation was, hey, help me. So helping each other stay where we were so that we wouldn't lose our spots and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have a sign, or did you see any favorite signs?
My body, my pussy, my choice. Huge double-sided sign that we had made here in Athens, and then we took up there. So that was ours. It was really good. It's a great sign. I'll forward my pictures. The signs varied tremendously. I have tons of pictures of them. But I guess my surprise with the signage was that they were about a ton of different issues. So I was expecting a lot of the signs like I had, for obvious reasons. But I saw a lot of environmental signs about science, about STEM, about evidence, about data. I saw a lot of signs having to do with immigration, which I wasn't expecting, and I was thrilled because in Clark County we have such a high population of underdocumented. So I was super happy to see that population represented. Just all sort of things that I wasn't expecting to see. I expected to see like very pro-woman, very all with the pussy signs and the pussy hats, and it was every issue imaginable. I think my favorite is the real generic that women's rights are human rights, because that's true. And that's probably what struck me the most. I had always believed that, but to see it on thousands of signs was really cool. Because hopefully people on television saw it, or I hope that somebody saw that and understand this is, it's not just pat, pat, good job, woman. Like a man on an elevator in the hotel, he was sweet. He said, I don't really understand what you ladies are doing here, but I support you. And I just kind of thought, well, he meant well, but I kind of took it as a good job, pat, pat on the shoulder, on the head, like, good job organizing yourself and getting yourself up here. Like, you need to understand what this is about. But I don't know. I hope that people like him who didn't understand, maybe in the weeks after were able to understand just based on the signage and that particular sign, that this isn't just a women's rights. This is for all human beings and for the greater good. And I don't know. I hope people got it. I don't know.
Let me see. Okay, so you said you were watching the media coverage. How did you feel about the media coverage? Did you think it was accurate? Did you think, something they could have done better? Or
no, I think it was accurate. I think it was really fascinating to see the overhead shots, because I guess I didn't realize how many people were there, and you could see in the overhead shots that that the march was slow. It was the beginning of it. Several hours later, it broke out into pockets of marches, but the original march we were barely moving. We were just happy to move. And you could kind of get that on the overhead. You could kind of see that it was slow, and there were tons and tons of people, and all the different screens that had been set up and all of that. So I think it did a great job with the magnitude. I mean, there's certain signs that it couldn't show because the language is what it is. Some people just use certain language. But if that's what's impactful for them, like, I have no problem with it. But I get why you can't show that on television. I think it was as accurate if you're not there, is as accurate as it possibly could have been. I'm not sure what the overall message was. I think it was more just reporting, hey, all these people are here and look at what they're doing and this is crazy, and reporting on the numbers. So yeah, I don't have any problem with the coverage. It helped me process it.
So when I first started doing this, it was, I don't know, just a handful of months after the marches. And I would ask everybody, what do you hope will happen? So for you, since we've got, a year plus, what did you hope would happen, and where do you find yourself now?
I hoped in particular that he would listen. One of the chants, there were so many chants, but one of them was like, welcome to your first day. We will not go away. And I kept saying to my friend, like, where is he right now? And does he understand what we're doing? And I kind of was really hopeful that he would give a damn. You know what I mean? I'm in education. Like, I'm an eternal idealist anyway. That's probably a personal flaw, but it's a good thing sometimes too. So that was my major hope, is that it wasn't even broad scale. It was, a lot of my hope was directed at this one person that I thought was so evil. I just wanted him to understand all the issues that are out there and all the concerns that are out there, and there are hundreds of thousands of people that have come to your doorstep on your first day of work to tell you what they think and what they believe, and how that might not be the same as some of the things that you have said and you believe in. I guess I was hoping there would be an impact, and what's been so disheartening is there's been none. And my boyfriend he's my realist, and he kept saying, Jesse, he's so stupid, like, he can't conceptualize this. He doesn't have the brain capacity to conceptualize what you're saying here. It's not so much evil, it's stupid, and uninformed. And so that's been the hardest thing, I guess, coming back, is to see what has happened since then with that particular president. It's just so much worse than I ever thought it possibly could be. I had no idea that in such a short period of time, so much damage could be done. So that's been alarming, and it's been very, very difficult. However, I think on the smaller scales, the micro scales, the local politics, I feel very hopeful. I see one of my best friends taking a step back from her career and going in and being a campaign manager for local politicians and really supporting, like, black women and women in general in politics. And I see, I hear on NPR, and I see, on the news, I see that happening in pockets. And on Facebook, you kind of hear about it, or you see the Women's March Facebook thread, and things are happening in small pockets. And so that keeps that hope kind of alive, that even though my particular president is very closed-minded and doesn't understand so much, that other people do understand, and other people did hear it. And with all the marches in all the cities, we were heard, just not by one person, but we were heard by thousands of others, and that's probably more important, in the long run. But it's still hard. It's hard to have that person there.
Let me see. Well, there were two things that have happened in the meantime. We talked about the March for Our Lives from Parkland, and the other one was the Me Too exhibit, the Me Too movement. And you talked about Ashley Judd. So what do you think about that?
I'm really happy that people have come forward. I'm not surprised. I think a lot of people were surprised about the number of people who came forward, either just with a t-shirt or with a little tattoo or with just even something on Facebook that just had the hashtag of Me Too. Saw a lot of people being like, gosh, I didn't realize it's that common. And I'm thinking, God, the number of times I've been grabbed or poked or something has been said to me or worse, don't be surprised. That's our reality as women. So I'm glad it's to light, and I feel like so many people feel safer to come forward now, and I'm thrilled about the movement. It's sad that we have to have a movement to talk about it, but I'm glad it's being talked about, and I'm glad that our climates in all sectors where people work are changing, and I hope that policies and procedures are changing. I hope that people are becoming more aware that it's not okay to treat people differently and to treat people poorly and to exploit them and all of those things. So I hope the Me Too movement keeps going. I hope it permeates human resources in every area possible, and I hope that it starts to get rid of that boys will be boys culture that I have seen colleagues say. Male colleague, oh, boys will be boys. Well, no, yeah, but who are you? You're their leader. So I'm hoping that the people who are raising our young people are starting to kind of shift what's acceptable behavior about treatment of other human beings. So I hope it keeps going.
And let me see. The one question is, what advice would you give someone to a march? And that's my last question.
I would tell them that everybody needs to do it once, even if you are like me and find that kind of thing exhausting as opposed to exhilarating. Go, because it's a game changer. I don't know how to explain it. A year later, it's really hard to articulate how impactful something like that is, but it really is. And there's no pressure to do amazing things. Like my friend has changed her life as a result of it. Her marriage has changed as a result of it. But for me, my world is pretty much the same. I just write more letters now. I make more phone calls now. I send out more postcards now. And I care a lot more about my local politics now. I'm more careful. So you don't have to feel any kind of pressure to do something with it. It's whatever you want to do with it when you come home, even if you don't want to do anything with it, but keep it private. I think it's just something that if you feel passionately about something, you should go. You should do it. It doesn't have to be in D.C. It can be in Athens, by the Arch. It can be in Atlanta, downtown. It could be in a town you've never been to that you just want to visit for the first time and get involved. I would say go and meet like-minded people, because it will keep your spirit renewed and positive instead of focused on, well, this is bad and this is bad. Being around like-minded people who are passionate and protesting and have signs and something to say, I think is important.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything that I have not asked you about that you think would be relevant?
I'm not sure. I like that you asked about Parkland. I'm an educator.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen with gun violence in the United States. With this assault weapons in particular in the United States. But I'm glad people are talking about it. And I know thousands of educators that if their district goes to approving our carrying weapons will probably leave. And I'm one of them. I would just go to a district where that's not okay. But I'm glad about both of those movements that are kind of coming about. At least people are talking. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what's going to happen in a few years, but we'll see. I will be hopeful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And we so appreciate you taking your time out to talk with us.
It's my pleasure.
And you were talking about, I went to DC as well, and I was over near the Smithsonian metro stop. And it was very hard. You're like, wow, there's a lot of people here. But it was hard to determine. Now, I was not as tight as you described.
Awesome.
But it was such a great atmosphere. My daughter and I got separated. And well, she's 20 something, so it's not like I was worried for her.
Still.
But I was sitting there talking to the police officer, and I've never seen. He was just so casual. He's like, "Yeah, this was great.
Wonderful,
this is wonderful." He's like,
"The police were awesome."
They're like, "You could come back anytime. This is easy." And but it just, I didn't catch on to it until later. I saw the media. And I had the same experience. You know, people were asking me about it. And I was like, oh, it's just a thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I got to let this out someplace. And then, about a week or so later, as you said, it took some time. And I started to okay, let me digest all of this and realize what it is.
And I'm so proud I was there. I'm so
and I was
thankful.
Kind of on a fluke. I mean, not a fluke. I really wanted to get there, but I was like, well, if I can, I can. And I am so thankful too.
Me too. It was awesome.
It was great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.